Last time on Lightlark, Isla portaled to the island of Lightlark and met everyone, including the broody hot boy, the mean girl, and the black gay guy. She also reunited with her secret best friend. We learned some very confusing magic rules, many of which aren't important, but some that are, so we'll just have fun figuring that out, I guess. Everyone is very old, except for Isla and her best friend Celeste, who pretended they didn't know each other, but now have a plan to find the secret MacGuffin. Isla fell off her balcony after randomly singing, and some guy rescued her. She's mad about it. To break the curse, everyone is super sure that one of them has to die, and that hasn't happened somehow. Isla is very suspicious of the High King Oro for reasons. Isla befriended her servant and then went to the market to buy some more sexy clothes and ran into broody boy Grimm. He took her on a chocolate date. And the MacGuffin Isla needs is in some random library, I guess. And my white balance is off again. Maybe that helped, maybe that made it worse. I don't know. I'm completely self-taught. Speaking of which, I just saw a comment on my channel on one of my videos where it's like, hey, there's like 2 minutes of blank space at the end of this video, lol. And I'm like, oh, cool. That happens sometimes. Please don't be afraid to tell me if I fail to notice that. Like sometimes a little bit of footage will get off into the recesses of the video that I'm making and I won't notice it at the end. Like sometimes I'm just so eager to get it done that I don't go check to the very end of the video like I should. So if you notice anything like that, feel free to point it out to me. Like I'm not gonna be mad. I'm just gonna be like, gosh darn it all. Again, Julian. Let's go. Chapter 7, Duel. What? How the fuck does that work? So she gets a message on the 5th day of the centennial, so we're not in a hurry to get anything done around here. The paper was charred, black, burned. Only a few words were visible, carved into the page with a knife?
Excuse me, what?
I'm not picturing some warrior carving away with a knife all barbaric. I'm picturing somebody there essentially scrapbooking with a little tiny scalpel to carve out these letters so they're readable. And also it says, be ready to duel. So someone carved "Be ready to duel" into a piece of paper, delicately charred all of the edges. Like Grimm, I'm just picturing him with little bitty glasses balanced on his nose, scrapbooking away. So we're getting descriptions of all the dresses. And they're all skimpy and super tight, and she like rolls her eyes at one of the low-cut bodices. And I'm like, but you already had that kind of dress. I thought you were going to the tailor to get dresses that were not like that. The last one had pockets, and I will admit that did make me like let out a brief exhale of amusement. But then I went back to being confused why she went and bought more of the same kind of dresses that she already had. But now she's wearing armor. For this demonstration, she's wearing armor. No explanation of where she got the armor from. We had to know that she went and got herself an ideal sword. But where did the armor come from? No idea. But she's also used to wearing armor because she was trained off page. But apparently these people who raised her, who were trying to keep her alive so their realm wouldn't die, also just put her outside wearing 50 pounds of chainmail as a child, in the rain with no food, no water, and wild animals chasing her.
Not a great plan.
Do you want this girl alive or not? Unless perhaps her mentors don't want her alive. Perhaps they're hoping that someone else will be able to step up. It sounds like she's wearing plate mail or maybe scale mail. I wish that this author would actually just use the names for things, because if we knew the names, then we could look it up online and see what it looked like. But when you just describe it, and Isla would know the names for these things because she's familiar with armor, but when you just describe it, I'm not really sure exactly what she's wearing. It definitely sounds like she has a breastplate and shoulder plates and greaves, which they do not call greaves. She calls them metal boots. You wouldn't wear metal boots. You wear something over the boot. Anyway, like name the pieces so that if we don't know what they are, we can just look it up and get a picture of what you're wearing here. I want to know what's the point of having starlings and moonlings. That's too many. Also, stars are suns. So get out of here, Julian. We don't want your logic here. But they're in this covered arena, and all of the villagers were invited to come watch this demonstration, and they're all separated by their people, so they're all color-coded in the stands. Are we trying to do a thing where, like, you could decide, ooh, I'm a moonling, I'm a starling, take a quiz online and find out which ling you are? So even though these first demonstrations, quote unquote, are not supposed to be deadly, they can be dangerous. Because apparently one of Isla's ancestors lost a hand in one of these demonstrations and then was forced to go home and produce an heir so that somebody better could be in the next demonstrations. Because I guess losing a hand means you can't control your powers as well? I don't know. Sure, whatever. This seems like the kind of competition that you have a bit later. I don't know why we're starting with a duel, but the king is like, you're all very menacing with your powers, but how will you fare without them? Which would be a lot more meaningful if they had already spent a lot of time demonstrating their powers. But since this is the first demonstration, it's like, yeah, sure, we're all very menacing, but like probably at least some of the villagers have never even seen our powers because they only lived 25 years. So can we get like some demonstrations of power first? No, we cannot, because Isla does not have any powers, and so we have to kick things off with a demonstration that doesn't require any. So the first two people to duel are Oro and Azul. Azul is the gay guy, and he will be fighting shirtless, but covered in jewels. Also, Azul apparently just sucks. He immediately loses the fight. The king just sword to his throat immediately, and Azul is like, cool, like he didn't even want to fight at all. So I guess you can just do that. Like, I'm sure Isla's gonna have to win, but you could also just be like, shucks, I'm no good at fighting, guess you win. So next is Celeste and Cleo. Celeste's weapon was long and thin like an ice pick. What am I picturing? Is she actually wielding like a pickaxe? Or no, Celeste's weapon is a sword. Cleo's is the pick, or whatever. I don't know. So while she's watching her friend fight, Grimm comes over to fucking pester her again. Grimm was a fearsome warrior. He wore a helmet of spikes like daggers that shot up from the crown of his skull. One dipped between his eyes, shielding his nose. I don't know how shieldy that is. It feels like you're probably gonna actually just stab yourself in the nose. His shoulders had the same sharp metal points that ran down the lengths of his arms, spikes everywhere. Great, so what I'm hearing is that he can barely move. He watches her swallow, and that makes him bare his teeth? Like, what? Is that supposed to be sexy? Celeste didn't win, but she fought okay, and Isla's like, good, that's the plan. We are just gonna be middle of the pack fighters. We're going to do well enough that nobody thinks that we're weaklings, but not so well that anybody thinks that we're a threat. Okay, fine. But then she says that her and Celeste are hoping to be paired together because everybody will think that they are weaklings and will want to pair the two weaklings together. And it's like, well, then why didn't you immediately lose the fight? Because then you would be labeled as weaklings. Why are you trying to be middle of the road? Middle of the road makes it more likely that someone else is going to want you as an ally. Apparently, Isla didn't put it together that she would be dueling Grimm, even though he, like, straight up told her that he was gonna duel her later on. I'm really tempted to give this girl Too Dumb to Live. Isla realizes that they are the only two ones here who do not have their people with them, because I guess all of the wildlings and all of the darklings, or whatever he is, left Lightlark for reasons. Now we're going to see how this author does with fight scenes, so that'll be interesting. Grimm is being very quick and dodging her blows. The man is wearing huge spiky armor. Why is he dodging, and how is he dodging? She is easily blocking him, even though she is a tiny girl with no powers, and we're told repeatedly how big he is. So she starts to just kick his ass. She starts to win, essentially, because she's just like, she goes into this flow state. She's just such an amazing fighter. Even in something as silly as the boffer sport that I do, if you only train with one person, you only really get good at fighting that one person. Believe me, I know, I fight my husband most of all. And I'm pretty good at fighting him, and he's pretty good at fighting me because we know each other so well, and we've learned each other's tendencies. But when I go out to fight somebody else, I maybe struggle a little bit more because they move completely differently. So her having one badass sword teacher and never getting to fight anybody else probably does not make her a very good fighter, actually. But don't worry though, she's an amazing fighter. Also, we have yet another tiny little waifish girl who's just an amazing kick-ass fighter. We did have mention of her using a slimmer sword because it's lighter, but that's basically the only lip service we get to the fact that she is blocking these giant blows from this enormous man. And it's a perfect time for me to mention that if you want to see a warrior queen who's built like a warrior queen, who's built like she can wield a giant axe, check out my book, The Wolf and the Hawk. Rayoni from my book could take on Grimm because they're roughly the same size. Also, she's doing a lot of spinning. And then she pins him to the wall with a blade at his throat, so like a reversal of how it usually goes in these sexy moments. These two might as well have not been wearing armor at all because it did not come up the entire battle, either as a hindrance or a way to block blows. Have her like be more agile, so she angles herself just so you see his blow strike off of her breastplate. You know, like maybe she goes in for a swing and her sword literally gets caught between the impractical spikes that he's apparently covered in. And then he like flicks his shoulder back and jerks the sword out of her hand. Like, do something interesting. She says that wildlings are above all warriors, and I'm like, are you? I thought you were like nature people. But I guess nature people plus sword people plus sexy people, you've got everything really. We don't need anybody else, the wildlings have everything covered. And then everybody clapped. Everyone's clapping for her. She looks at sad boy, what's his fucking name, Grimm, and she expects to see that he's sad and upset at being beaten, but actually he's smiling. Celeste is mad, and I would be too, that Isla won the battle that she was just supposed to do okay at and then lose. Cleo does manage to injure Oro, the Sun King guy, and he doesn't bother to heal it because apparently he can just like self-heal. He just like stays in the arena because he won the fight and waits for Isla to come and beat him in a battle. He swings for her, and his swing is like really hard, and she's really struggling to block it, even though we have not been told over and over again how big he is. But she does the thing where she lets him put all his weight on her, and then she just like scoots off to the sides. But don't worry, Isla's arms are super strong because her teachers made her hang by her arms from a tree for, let me see here, 5 hours. This is the sort of ridiculous anime training that I would expect from Naruto. It's giving Rock Lee.
あれって重しか少しくらいの重りを外したところでガーラの砂についていけるわけが
She never let go even when her shoulders dislocated. That's how much of a badass our main character is, and I hate it. I don't know why so many authors think that we want like these perfect, amazing characters who are just good at everything, and 2 books back to back like that is really not speaking to me personally. And then her jailers, I'm going to keep calling them that, popped her shoulders back into place without any kind of medication. We have also inadvertently created the storyline of an abused person thankful that they were abused because it made them strong.
No, don't like that.
Also, her arms are strong because they made her hang from a tree, but that's a different muscle. Like, they should have had her pushing against something, because that's what she's doing now. Hanging from the tree, different muscles from pushing something away. Honestly, they probably did more damage to her than good. They probably fucked up her shoulders, having popped them both out of the socket and then her continued to hang there. Like, she should be seriously injured by that, not like stronger somehow. But now she's winning. She went from like, oh, he's so strong, I have to dodge and block, to she got one good lick in and now she's just like advancing on him. Isla remembers at the last fucking minute, just as she's about to be the very best, like no one ever was, that, oh yeah, their plan wasn't to kick everyone's ass. So she lets Oro win instead. I hate all of this. So my solution for this would be, obviously they are going to be better than her because they are 100-year-old warriors with the body of 20-year-olds. So they have had a lot more practice, a lot more opponents. But she goes up against Oro and she realizes that he's just kind of not a fighter by nature, like maybe he just doesn't really train for it, or something else is going on, you know, a little mystery for later. It's not so extreme that she is like, oh my gosh, she's going to be super easy, but at the same time, like she goes in prepared for the fight of her life and she realizes that it's just a regular fight and she's like, well, dang, this is weird. Like, do something with it instead of just, he's a really good warrior, but she's an even better warrior. There's no nuance to it. It's just my main character is so good that she has to let this hundreds of 500-year-old warrior king win. Of course, Oro knows that she let him win, but now she's caught his attention where his eyes were like dead and hollow before. Now he's interested in her because she's special. That's the end of that chapter. How is this author at writing fight scenes? Rudimentary. I'm definitely able to follow them, that's for sure. But every fight scene should tell a story, and the only story that these fight scenes tell is that our main character is just really, really good. Your reader wants to fear for your main character. They want, quite frankly, to see your main character bleed. They don't want your main character to just win and be good at everything, because that makes them so boring. I feel like I'm critiquing this book in as many words. If you wrote down all of my critiques, they would be as many words as these chapters have. Anyway, I will see you for the next chapter. Okay, buddy. Here you go. Read the book for the people. Tell them what you think. He says it's shit. I don't even need to read it. I hope you don't mind me snarking on this book, saying things like it's shit and stuff like that. I know I say those things, but it's just more entertaining than me saying like this reads very novice and very inexperienced over and over again. In reality, I don't necessarily believe there's such a thing as a bad book, because somebody is going to love it. There's someone to love pretty much any book in existence. After that explanation no one asked for, we're back for chapter 8, which is called Celeste. Because Celeste is probably going to be mad that her little peon, Isla, is not doing as she was told. Also, I was thinking as I was emptying my memory card, I was humming the song, Unstoppable in my head, because Isla made me think of that, you know. I'm unstoppable, I'm a Porsche with no brakes, that one. And I remembered that I had made a music video of that song for a character called Bart from Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, which you should 100% watch. Bart is an amazing character, and she is also invincible and very good at fighting because she is a holistic assassin. The universe protects her, wants her to win, makes her like invincible and good at things. Which could lead to a very boring character, but no, she's a fucking amazing character, and you know why? Because she's unhinged. The best and most interesting character for me in that show. So there are ways to do an invincible character who's good at everything, making them interesting. And Isla is not that, but I cannot recommend Dirk Gently highly enough, especially if you like bonkers things like I secretly do. As usual, I will do anything but get down to reading this book. Chapter 8, Celeste. We're remembering when Isla met Celeste, and how she was like terrified of the other rulers because they're so much older and more skilled than her. And she's like, Celeste, we're the same age, so like maybe we're on even playing ground, but ooh, starlings are still powerful. I don't know why the starling ruler hasn't been killed before this, because like I said, every time they are like essentially a child, especially when compared with all of these other rulers. Make the curses a lot more deadly for everybody, and make this have happened right after or almost after the curse was enacted. But anyway, I'm sure Celeste has also figured out that she's one of the most vulnerable ones, and she's probably being very savvy to ally herself with the other most vulnerable one, because that can put Isla in a position for Celeste to kick the legs out from under her should the need arise, even though Isla is an amazing fighter, better than anyone, so I don't know how Celeste could get the better of her. Question. In the last fight, they were allowed to injure each other. Did Isla have a plan for if she was injured, because her blood is supposed to produce flowers? Did she have like a pocket full of flowers on her person somewhere, or was she so certain that she would not be injured that she didn't even bother? Would have been fun when she was doing that preparation scene where we were poorly describing armor if she had been like, and she always kept this pouch of flowers on her in case she was injured. You know, little details like that can really make your story come to life. The girls became besties, they had sleepovers, they probably ate popcorn and watched movies, I don't know. Eventually Isla tells Celeste that Isla has no powers, and it's like crying over it, and Celeste is like, no, we work together forever. But if I was Celeste, I would be like, good to know. Good to know. You know, in case I need to kill anyone to break the curse, I now know that you are officially the weakest link. Logging that away. Okay, here's where a better, more skilled author could make you really see this character's anger versus just telling us. That was when the starling stood. Energy crackled in the room, a sure sign that she was angry. A sure sign that she was angry is lazy, it's simple, it's telling. Like, energy crackled in the room is a really good start. What does that feel like? Is it visible? Does it prickle against Isla's skin? And more importantly, Celeste has stood up. Is she rigid? Is she, you know, like, give us visual things. You're so close with the whole like energy crackling in the room, but then you get lazy and you say that she's mad. You just tell us that she's mad. This is one place where I actually think that Piper CJ has a slight advantage on Alex Astor, because Piper CJ did the thing that we've talked about where she would tell you a character was feeling in one way, and then she would then go on to show you how you could tell that the character was feeling that way. And then as an author, you can go back in and eliminate that first part where you tell and just leave the show. Alex doesn't do that. She only has telling. She doesn't have showing. So actually that does put her at a slight disadvantage. If she wants to grow as an author, she needs to get better at showing. Now don't get me wrong, there have been some books that are mostly telling that have been very popular. I didn't necessarily like them, but they were very popular. However, I feel that majority of readers prefer to be shown than just flat out told. It just doesn't feel as immersive. It doesn't tie us in with the characters. The thing about books with a lot of telling is that they are not very character focused. They are very plot focused. And this book's plot is not worthy of hanging your hat on, so I would try to focus on the characters. She's more upset that Isla beat Grimm than she is at Isla almost beating the king. So the girls want to be paired together because that will allow them to go look for the bond breaker together, okay? But like, why can't they do that now? Why haven't they started their search? They have a magic teleportation stick. They could be searching now. They don't need to wait to be paired up together. I think that we are ready to cross off terrible plans, because every single plan that I have heard in this book, not great. Oh no, this girl cries silver as well, just like Amaris. I can't escape all these silver girls. Maybe that's why I kind of don't like Celeste. I should be liking Celeste because, you know, girl friendship and women helping women, but I don't like her, and I think it's maybe because she reminds me a little bit too much of Amaris. Again though, they have way more chemistry than anyone else. So, oh, I guess they are looking? Why didn't they need to be paired together then? It just says, later Celeste told Isla that she had searched the Star Isle library. In one sentence. One entire library knocked out of the running. That's fucking convenient. Did Isla get a disguise to go into the Starling territory? I don't remember it. I'm too lazy to check. Because, like, I would be annoyed that my friend went without me because I totally stole a disguise to go there. But now they need some gloves because this book is also like a video game, so they need to complete some fetch quests before they can go on the main quest. They need to get into the protected section of the other libraries, which is just straight out of Harry Potter. Isla had researched them obsessively. Once again, we're just told that she was really into blank until she was good at it or had all the knowledge that she needed. So thank goodness she just did all these things in the past. Whenever the author needs her to have done something, she has indeed done it. The gloves are made out of human skin, but also, again, are these people humans, or are humans separate from whatever starlings, moonlings, blah blah blah, what they are? Why are they made out of human skin? I hope that's explained, and not just because, I don't know, that's neat. Doesn't fit the tone of this book, really. It feels like it belongs in a different book. Isla is like suggesting that they can make their own by going to skin somebody. They're like, we'll go into the prison and we'll find a prisoner and we'll fucking skin him and make some gloves. The tone is all over the place. Don't worry though, Celeste is gonna worry about the human gloves, while Isla does, I don't know, fuck all, keeps winning, I guess. Isla also reports that she couldn't find any sunling clothing. And Celeste is like, that might make sense because I keep hearing reports that the sunlings are like separating themselves more and more. She still thinks that the king was the one who saved her when she fell off the balcony, and I still have no idea why she would think that. She's like, how am I supposed to sneak into the Moonling Isle if they're guarding it really well? And it's like, you have a teleportation stick. I thought that's how you were getting anywhere. And then it just ends with Isla being like, I'll figure it out. I'm sorry I failed at the duel, but I will figure out a way past the guards. And the next chapter is long-ish, but again, nothing compared to what we're used to from The Night and Its Moon, so I think I might just read that, and that should fill up this memory card again, probably, and then I will stop for the night, because that's a lot of this book. Okay, we're back. Chapter 9, Crown. Not the crown, just crown. I guess wildlings only need to eat a heart or two a month to survive. Again, is this true? I don't know what's true about her people and what's not. Because Isla is an exception, but in what ways is she an exception? She doesn't have powers, but does that mean that she doesn't still devour hearts? And I can't remember. Is devouring hearts part of their curse, or were they always just into eating hearts? Anyway, they keep giving her hearts, so every time she goes to dinner, she has to sit there with an empty plate because they're delivering the hearts to her chambers instead. Oh, we have anachronistic language. Reminder why it was important to stay under the radar. What is radar? This is a fantasy world. Obviously, this anachronistic language is not nearly as bad as Jenna's, but I'm giving it to it. Some readers don't care about anachronistic language in their fantasy books, and there's such a thing as getting too bogged down with like the history of a word and getting completely lost from the story. So I only really try to bring it up when it's very blaringly obvious, like radar in a fantasy book where there's obviously no technology like that at all. They have human skin magic gloves. They don't have radar. For example, in one of my books, some of my characters say fuck as a swear word, and the book is set in sort of vaguely Victorian times, and the person was like, they wouldn't say fuck, and I went and I researched it, and they would say fuck, but back then it was only used specifically to refer to sex, the act. So they wouldn't necessarily say it as a swear, but we're so close to the time period where people would say it as a swear that I'm fine with putting it in my fantasy book, because like I can just say, hey, in this alternate history timeline where there's magic and monsters, they just started saying that as a swear word sooner. Like that kind of thing, that strikes me as a little bit too nitpicky, but again, radar. She decides that this dinner is definitely one of the demonstrations. I guess nobles, quote unquote, of the various lands are here at this dinner, and they're all looking her over and sizing her up and staring at her lustfully. Again, she's like, they're viewing me as a monster, someone who eats people, but she's like, they don't know me. And it's like, yeah, but do they know your people? Please explain to me whether your people eating hearts is something that they actually do or something that people made up. Please allow me to read for you again from page 5 of my copy of Lightlark. Each curse was uniquely wicked. Wildlings was twofold. They were cursed to kill anyone they fell in love with and to live exclusively on human hearts. This is what the narrative has told us. And aside from Isla not eating hearts herself, it has never been discussed or disproven by the book so far. You understand my confusion. Grimm appears beside her where he's apparently been invisible, and it's just, are we not going to remark on how fucking creepy that is? The author does want us to know that her main character is incredibly sexy though, because Grimm looks over Isla and we get a description of just how hot Isla is. Honestly, we have gotten more descriptions of Isla's hotness than either of her love interest hotness, and I'm wondering if the author is more into Isla than her romantic interests. Sometimes I wonder about these authors and like, do you want to fuck your main character? Because it feels like it sometimes. Wow, what a line, Grimm. I'm not sure what I enjoy more, seeing the way you grip your sword or the way your dress grips you. Man, this flirty dialogue is just painful. She feels way more guilty about having taken some of that tailor's inventory than she feels worried about having to skin someone to make gloves. This also doesn't make any sense. So Azul has some tattoos, and Isla thinks about how her people also tattoo themselves sort of ritually in celebration of achievements and things. So tattooing in a positive light in her culture. But for some reason she was never allowed to get tattoos herself because she's a representative of her culture. Like, your skin is not your own, but like, if tattoos in her culture are seen as good and positive, then why would they not want their queen to have tattoos to mark her prowess or achievements? So now, after we had the demonstration of no powers, now Azul is like, we need to demonstrate our powers. And Isla was just sitting here being like, I'm trained, I'm ready, I'm prepared for anything. But she didn't think that there would ever come a time when she would need to demonstrate her powers. Wow. This author is such an underwriter. Grimm is asked to go first. He opened his palm. The room changed. Suddenly there were 100 Grimms standing between each chair, all smirking. The ceiling cracked open. The floor split. Large slabs of stone fell right onto their heads. Screaming pierced the air. Everything disappeared. That whole sequence, which could have been so cool and visual and visceral, took up this. We have no time to even register what just happened. Or no one does. Like, we get no reactions from the people as it's happening. It just blink and you fucking miss it. But Grimm just continues to have like all of these illusion abilities. And we have no idea where his powers begin or end because the magic system is not thought out even in the slightest bit. Oh, these people are so dumb. Oro watched Grimm with hard eyes, like the display was a threat, a declaration of exactly what he was capable of. Yes, it is exactly that. This is the whole point. They're demonstrating their powers. It's a demonstration of what he's capable of. That's the fucking point. Bad plans is a good thing we've already crossed that off. Tara and Poppy had prepared her for this possibility. But their complicated plan had hinged on her already having gotten close to the king and stolen one of the enchantments he supposedly had in his personal collection. So you were counting on her not having to demonstrate her powers until after she had already made the king fall in love with her. Who knows how long that's going to take because she doesn't actually have any seduction powers, which her teachers knew. She does point out that all she does is go along with other people's plans. She never comes up with a plan of her own, and that is true. So Cleo makes a blood wine shark that turns to ice and explodes, and all of the nobles clap. These are the same nobles who were looking at Isla with horror and dread, but we're fine with flying ice shark that explodes. Celeste gets up to do her demonstration, and she's basically Jubilee. She makes fireworks. All of these people have super cool, amazing, magical powers, and they are only getting one paragraph each to do really neat demonstrations. Isla's like freaking out, she's having an anxiety attack, and all I can think of is like, yeah, this is your fault. You didn't plan for this. Fortunately, again, something that could be a weakness in Isla is going to turn out to not really be a thing, because she's like, I never come up with my own plans. But now she's coming up with her own plan on the fly, so she's probably going to be fine, and she will once again not be punished for any kind of failing, because she's just going to be like, I'm so bad at plans. But now I'm good at plans. So Isla sets the king up at one end of the table, and then she goes to the other end and spends as much time doing things like removing her rings and removing a hairpin that's secretly a throwing star as these people got for the description of their entire demonstration. So she ties one of her gloves over her eyes. Good thing she's wearing long gloves. And she's gonna throw the throwing star at him without looking, which I guess is a demonstration of power. Everybody else did these huge displays, granted displays that seemed like they took about 10 seconds, but huge demonstrations, and she's just gonna throw something at a guy. And once again, the author has just pulled something out of nowhere. Of course, we discover that Isla is also expertly trained at throwing weapons. But she knocks the crown off of Oro's head, and apparently that's a good enough demonstration of magic, even though everybody else did like super fucking amazing things. Everyone's like, whoa, oh my gosh, she threw a thing at a guy. So finally it's the king's turn last. Here's where his demonstration starts. So this is his entire demonstration. The king. His demonstration is to turn the table to gold, and she's worried that if he can turn the table to gold, maybe he can turn people to gold. And the king wins the demonstrations, and Isla thinks, yeah, he deserved to, because he turned a table to gold. Okay, I guess. Like, the Darkling guy can make copies of himself and then trick everyone into thinking that the ceiling is falling in and the floor has disappeared. But the king can turn the table to gold. The next chapter is called Juniper, but I think I'm going to be done for the night. This book is kind of so bad it's making me want to write my own book, which is always a nice, like, little bonus. When you read a book that is deeply flawed, it can often inspire you to go write something better, and that's what I'm going to go try to do. Hello, and welcome to the surface of the sun. This is what everything looks like balanced for nighttime in the daytime. If you hear noises, that's Maureen. Come here, Maureen. Come here. Yay? It's Maureen the ferret. Hello, everybody. I'm Maureen. I'm a psychotic goblin, but Mommy put me on a shirt. Yeah. If you would like a shirt with Maureen the ferret on it, you can purchase it on my Redbubble. Buy a shirt so Mommy can buy me treats. Okay, Maureen. Go cause chaos, but not to me. Cause chaos to someone else, please. Let's go. I'm just like super eager to start being able to put this up for you guys. So, chapter 10. It feels like we're making no progress. This book is so quick feeling to read, but I have so much to say about it. That's the problem. But anyway, chapter 10 is called Juniper. It's been 5 days since Azul's demonstration dinner. So like huge chunks of time are passing. That's another problem that this book has. All of the scenes that we're privy to feel very short and very glossed over and often end too soon. And then we get big old chunks of time that we don't even get any like experience with. Like 5 days have passed. And apparently nothing's really happening. Celeste is looking for those freaky gloves and no other demonstrations have been called. Like, I don't know why they need so much time for this centennial if most of it is spent doing nothing. So Isla has decided to hone in her detective skills, and she has spent the 5 days listening, watching, all of that stuff, which of course we're not going to see. We're just going to get a recap. I wouldn't necessarily say that this is something that we needed to be there with her for, because you don't need to be there with a character for every single moment of their life. And it is okay to gloss over things that you want to get moving quickly to get to the important stuff in your story. However, so much is glossed over in this book, I almost would have liked to have maybe spent one night with her on her patrol of this place and learn some things, maybe meet some new characters or something interesting. Because this book is so light on any details and really getting you into any scenes with the characters, I'm kind of begging for scraps at this point. She's decided something about a certain barkeep, and she has gone to hassle him, I guess. So Isla has noticed through her 5 days of playing detective that people come in and out of this bar too quickly without partaking of any alcohol, so she's suspicious that this guy is up to something else in the bar. Of course, Isla is also a skilled pickpocket, because why wouldn't she be? And she tried to pick a couple pockets of people who came out of the bar, and they never had anything. But this is how she has figured out that he is an information broker, which for a bartender seems fairly, standard. I don't know if that really took a whole 5 nights of investigation. Oh, his name is Juniper. He's like, you can't pay me with money, I deal in secrets, which is very fantasy book-esque and all, but I also think that realistically he would probably want money. Secrets don't pay the bills. So her secret that she tells him is she could have won the first demonstration, and he believes her immediately. He's like, yep, that's a good secret. So I don't know if he has some kind of magic to be able to tell that she's not lying, because that seems like it would be a super easy thing to lie about. Like, yeah, I totally let him win. And this guy looks at this tiny little woman and is like, oh yes, I believe this. So she's like, how do I get past the guards on Moon Isle? Which is dumb, you have a teleportation stick, but okay. And then this guy tells her something that she could have figured out if she'd thought about it for 10 seconds. He's like, there are no guards during the full moon, because if the full moon is out, they fall in the water and drown, or something. Like, it's more dangerous to be near the water, even though we've already established that the water doesn't, like, call to them or anything. They just, like, better not risk it. Have we given her Too Dumb to Live? I feel like maybe it's time. Yeah, we have not done that yet. We're gonna do that. We're gonna go ahead and do that because, like, she's supposed to be very clever. She's figuring stuff out. She's noticing things. And she didn't think that these people who are afraid of water during the full moon might want to stay away from guarding, like, bridges and stuff during a full moon. And luckily, the full moon is in a week. It would have been really hilarious if she had just missed it. She asked the one question that I didn't expect her to ask. Not, where are all of the sunling things? Like, why is the king withdrawing so much? Not, hey, where could I find some gloves made of human skin? This whole thing with her stealing clothing from the tailor is, like, keeps cropping up, and I don't understand. Like, she stole clothing, and then she kept feeling guilty about it over and over and over again. I haven't been pointing it out every time, so I'm just like, okay, we're trying to give her some characterization, probably. She feels guilty about stealing clothes from the tailor. But now the barkeep is also like, hey, you wouldn't happen to know anything about stealing clothing, would you? I don't know why he'd suspect her. So is this going to be like a major plot point? Are we keeping this in the reader's brain because later this is going to be a big thing that gets Isla in trouble if somebody is like, somehow I am going to get you killed because I found out that you stole clothing. Why is this a plot point? Isla's stomach twisted into a braid. Well, I guess every now and then Alex Astor has to pull a Piper CJ and just write something real weird. And then we're on to the next chapter, so I'm just going to read it because the next one's also like 4 pages long. But I'm going to shut the camera off in between, so I'll see you for the next chapter. And we're back. If you notice a lighting difference, I'm still playing with the lighting in here. If people are going to complain about something on my channel, it's always your lighting is bad, and I'm like, fair. But also, I'm trying really hard to get it okay. We are on to chapter 11, which is just called Fear. I guess it is a fucking plot point, because we start out with, the tailor knew his clothes were missing. She's like certain that this is going to spell her downfall. She's like, we have to find the bond breaker before anybody figures out that I stole some clothes. Why not just also make her a master seamstress so she can make her own clothes, honestly? Might as well. Apparently she can't start searching the libraries, though, until after Celeste's demonstration. So Celeste has decided that her demonstration is going to be a quote-unquote test of fear. Isla is, of course, prepared for this because they're besties, so she's like, I have already prepared everything ahead of time. So this author has a very choppy, staccato style to her writing, and I haven't been commenting on it too much because everybody's style is a little bit different, but it can fuck with your reading experience a little bit if you do it too much. Like here, the walls were covered in paintings, period. Portraits, period. Sunling leaders, period. Why not just say the walls were covered in paintings, comma, portraits of sunling leaders? This is the sort of thing that you don't need to chop up into little bits, into little sentences. Keep getting interrupted, needing to go check on ferrets. This is a big house, so if I hear them making noises in a random room, I'm like, okay, what are we doing now? Here's another way that she's taken me out of the story. So she's talking about Oro. He had been on the balcony as soon as the sun went down, as if desperate to be within inches and minutes of sunshine. You know, that's sad, that's melancholic, it's kind of pretty. And then she says, sunshine adjacent, which just sends the tone of your last sentence crashing down. And then we have more of her choppiness. She likes to not only break up the sentences, but she likes to break them up into their own little paragraphs. So after she says sunshine adjacent, she says, a cruel curse, period, paragraph. All of them were so cruel, period, paragraph. Yeah, that's her style, and you can have a kooky style if you want, but sometimes this particular one is taking your reader out of the story. Apparently, Celeste today just looks like Elsa from Frozen. Like, that's the outfit we are describing.
Whoa.
Once again, Isla notices that she and Grimm are the only ones who are alone because they don't have attendants or people here, again, for reasons. Like, she makes eye contact, and once again, she's thinking all these very deep thoughts. Why did he help me? What's he up to? Like, oh my gosh, world's greatest detective over here. He wants to bang, girl. Lana's here. He wants to bite my feet. Very bitey, this boy. Mother, I crave violence. Oh, this description, wow, just like masterclass. She was standing by something tall and cloaked. Ah, with that description, how can I help but picture whatever the fuck she's standing next to? So Celeste, the thing beside Celeste that was cloaked, is a big old mirror. And immediately, being the Dragon Age bitch that I am, I was like, is it an illuvian?
This is an illuvian, an elven artifact from a time long before their empire was lost to human greed.
Oh, okay. It's like Harry Potter. When they look in the mirror, they see their greatest fear. So it's like a combination of the Mirror of Erised and the Boggart. I know I hate to compare things to Harry Potter, but it's like something that most people are at least tangentially familiar with. I'd much rather compare everything to Dragon Age, though. Also, the mirror only works once, which is why, conveniently, Isla has not been able to practice and find out what her one true fear is. Like I've mentioned before, in a fantasy book, you can get away with a certain amount of this is just how it is. This is just how it is, this is just how the mirror works. But again, if you don't have that grounding, if the reader doesn't feel like they understand at least the basic rules of your magic, even if those rules are pretty soft, then you just saying, yes, this is how it is, the reader's like, but why though? Because they don't understand your world. This world is not built, it is shotgunned at a wall, and the scatter shot is just like the world building. Also, I guess the mirror doesn't show everybody else your greatest fear, which seems like that would be why she would do it. But Oro goes up to it and he puts his hand on the mirror and like he can see his greatest fear and he's like having a moment, but we can't, which is really anticlimactic because that means all we are gonna find out is what our main character's greatest fear is. More powers of the mirror that we're now just finding out about. If you can't conquer your greatest fear in the mirror, you're stuck there forever. Why do I keep trying to understand anything in this book? Why I'm setting myself up for disappointment every time. Oro conquers his fear in like 3 minutes though, so no worries. Apparently, this demonstration and the use of this relic is a huge part of her and Celeste's plan. I hope it makes sense when it's all revealed why. Cleo, of course, because she's a badass, beats the mirror in 2 minutes, because this bitch is not afraid of anything, and I kind of like her the best, honestly. Everybody's beating this thing really quickly. The longest it takes is 5 minutes. So, Isla's like so worried. This whole chapter has been introducing the mirror and then Isla being like, what if I can't do it? What if I'm trapped there forever? This is such an important part of our plan, but oh no. And it's like, fuck, we know you're gonna be fine. You're always fine. You're good at everything. And then it ends with her putting her hand on the mirror. And what an exciting chapter. Alright, let's get on to chapter 12 and find out what Isla sees in the mirror. She's the only one whose true fear we actually get to find out. So she's pretty sure that her greatest fear is failing her people. And then she thinks that when she goes through the mirror, she's just going to be subjected to seeing all of her people dead at her feet, blood everywhere, the forest on fire. But when she gets there, it's just her room. Like, there's a little bit of nuance to it. Her fear is being sent back after the Centennial, having failed, and just having to live out the rest of her life by herself in the glass castle with nobody to care about her except that she would also be forced to have a child, which that's fair. Like, that terrifies me. If I was forced to have a child, I would not be on board. So, yeah. So she basically watches a reflection of herself go insane as she's trapped in her glass room forever. For some reason, her reflection self doesn't have her star stick. Maybe she got it taken away or something, I don't know. And then, very classic, the room just starts to like crunch in around her in a scene that would probably be more engaging if it was on a movie screen, but we all know that this book might become a movie someday, so. Also, the ferrets are just having a regular old party right in this room, so just don't mind the noise, it's just them. Reading this, all I can think of is...
Shut down all the garbage matches on the detention level, will ya? Do you copy? Shut down all the garbage matches on the detention level!
Of course, the collapsing room nearly crushes her. A big old piece of glass lands on her, but she's like, she just goes, I refuse, I will not live this life, I'm going to go out there and win, and that allows her to like imagine up one of her swords, and she uses the sword to break the glass, which, I mean, okay, it's an illusion. And then bam, she's back in the regular world after possibly one of the least interesting, greatest fear sequences that a book could produce, but hey, at least we got to see all of it and it didn't feel like the author just cut it off. It did seem for a moment like we were going in a different direction besides just like she willed herself to be stronger, because for a moment when she was seeing her sad reflection of herself going insane, she like reached out to comfort her, and I was like, is you showing companionship to like your potential future self, is that going to be like how you get out? Is compassion and companionship going to be how we get out of this? No. Oh no, Isla was in there for 6 minutes instead of the 5 like most of the other people, so she's just a failure. So okay, the fear mirror I guess has multiple uses. So we're finally finding out why Celeste wanted to use it. Whenever anybody put their hand on the mirror like stored a part of them, their essence. It had stored their essence. Also, Celeste found the human skin gloves off screen, so she's got them now, so don't worry about it. These gloves are like, again, so out of place in this world full of people who can generate sparkly fireworks. Cause like, she's pulling them on and they're like papery and leathery and like gross, and it's like, what are these doing here? But she puts the gloves up against the mirror, and that allows her to soak the power from the other rulers back into herself. Celeste is doing this, not Isla. I thought maybe they could each have a glove, but which is again, we just have to nod along and be like, sure, yeah, that's a thing that the magic in this world could do. Yeah, of course. Just enough power goes into the human skin gloves that the girls will be able to access all of the libraries. This is such a weird fucking plot point. It didn't even take them that long to hunt down the gloves. Like, I was like, maybe the hunt for the gloves is going to be like a substantial thing, but no, Celeste found them off page. Sometimes as an author, even when I can see the seams of a story, I can be like, identify, okay, but this is why it needs to happen. Why the author has included it, because they need this, this, and this, these beats to happen. So they've included this thing, but it might not be very graceful. I cannot understand why the glove subplot needed to happen. Alright, I'm gonna stop reading because I gotta put the ferrets away and get to work. I'm actually a little disappointed because really I'd rather be reading this terrible book than doing the work that I need to do today, but there we are. Hi, hello, we are back. If I seem kind of low energy today, it's because yesterday I just got 3 booster shots, so flu, COVID, and tetanus. I'm finally up to date on tetanus. So, what better thing to do than sit and read a terrible book and play bad book bingo, right? right. I also have one of my favorite holiday time treats that only is really available around the holiday season. That is these super cheapo chocolate covered cherries. I love them. They're terrible. I have weird taste in candy. I either like high quality chocolate or like trash. One thing I want to talk about with this book before we get into the chapter is I was thinking about this one and A Night and Its Moon, because obviously I just am reading them back to back and talking about how this one everything feels like it's going too fast, and how with The Night and Its Moon everything felt like it was going too slow. And I think both of these authors have actually a similar problem as each other. It's just sort of the opposite ends of the spectrum. I'm talking about fundamentally not understanding how to pace a scene. Because in A Night and Its Moon, Piper CJ really struggled with her action scenes not to bog them down with too much text, too many descriptions, the character's thoughts all over the place. And in this book, we have the opposite problem, where things that should be pausing for beautiful descriptions and getting the character's thoughts are not happening. And remember how we talked about words on the page take up space and time in the reader's mind? That is true. The more words you put on the page, the longer it physically takes the reader to read, the longer they will instinctively think the scene is taking. Even if you tell them this is only taking a split second, if you then give them pages of text, their mind is not going to interpret that as a split second, because it physically in the real world took them so long to read. Same thing here. If you've got these like demonstrations that are supposed to be big and beautiful and impressive, but they only take a paragraph, the reader is picturing them going by like bam. Nobody in that room would have even had time to process that a demonstration was happening, because it would be over so fast. At least to the reader, that's what it seems like, because it only took up a paragraph. This is kind of next level stuff that you're not going to get from Jenna Moreci. That's why you come to my channel. As far as Jenna goes, actually, she's okay at pacing a scene. She doesn't have the problem nearly as markedly as either of these authors. And I will say, I come at this from the point of view of sometimes I have to correct this in my own stories. It's a subconscious way that we can manipulate our readers, and it's definitely something to think about in the way that both of these books are making a similar mistake on the opposite ends of that spectrum. Let's go with chapter 13, The Tower. Ooh, that's interesting. You guys probably know, because I don't hide it, I read tarot. And the Tower is a card that's kind of a misfortune card. You've probably heard of it. It's like one of the 3 tarot cards that are always in movies and stuff. And this is chapter 13. Interesting. Let's see what kind of misfortune we have in store in this chapter, shall we? Okay, I thought they were going to go library hunting, but the girls are making an elixir. Once again, we are skipping plot points. The girls have already investigated a couple of libraries together, and we didn't get to see it. Like, look, we are not very far into the book, and it feels like we have skipped so many things that could be important things or interesting moments. And I think that just kind of hints to you how overcrowded and cluttered this book is, because to keep the story moving, the author has to be like, they did this off page and they did that off page and they totally got that done. And as a result, we feel like the author doesn't really care about what's happening to her characters. The elixir that they're trying to make is hair dye. They're like really stressed over this hair dye. Though Azul's own hair was dark, many Skylings had hair the color of their realm. So are we talking blue? And if so, why doesn't Azul have blue hair? Can black people not have blue hair? I'm confused by the implications of this. We're getting a blow-by-blow for some reason. I know I said this author glosses over everything, but we are getting a blow-by-blow of all of the ingredients that are going into this hair dye. And I'm like, why have you chosen this? Why this, Alex asked her, instead of so many other cool things you could give us more time and attention on? She's like super anxious all of a sudden about impersonating another realm, which makes it sound like she's literally going to be disguising herself as the realm. Is this scene just because the author wanted to have a girl dyes her friend's hair scene? I don't know, I feel like this author's priorities are very strange in this book. She seems almost disinterested in a lot of the adventures and things that seem to me they would be interesting, and instead is focused on chocolate dates and girly sleepover parties where they dye each other's hair. If the leader of the Skylings has dark hair and nobody thinks that that's weird, why does Isla have to dye her dark hair? You move like a shadow, Celeste continued. You strategize like a general. You can blend in anywhere. I've seen you. Well, if you've seen her, then she wasn't blending in, was she? I don't think we're quite ready to give this one Everyone Praises the MC, but that's pretty close. That's the kind of thing that always annoys me, where another character just kind of has to tell the main character what their skills and abilities are. Okay, we're getting a little bit better of an idea, finally, of the Lightlark situation. There's the mainland, and then every single little bitty isle that belongs to the various races around the mainland is just connected by one bridge. We have a whole little sequence where Isla decides she shouldn't cross the dangerous bridge because if she falls, her entire realm will die, but then she just bumps into a random citizen who's like, hey, you crossing the bridge? And she has to cross it then. I don't know why that sequence is in there. So the Skyling Isle is probably as you're picturing it. There's floating things, floating mountains, tall spires, all of that stuff. Also, the only person who can fly now is Oro. I'm curious why the Skylings kept with the floating situation after none of them could fly. Maybe I just missed it. It's possible I just missed it. If it's like one sentence. Why can't she use her star stick to get to these places? She was having to walk in and infiltrate and dye her hair and all that stuff. And maybe somewhere it just said she couldn't use her star stick on Lightlark, and maybe I missed it, but I don't remember seeing it, so I'm just sitting here going, why? The Skylings are very like happy and jovial as a people, probably because their leader is gay. She gets to the library and it's kind of cool. It's a tower, name of the chapter. But the library, the books are all arranged like on the outer wall, and so they just spiral upward, and that's pretty cool. I want that library. She gets to the top of the tower and she's like, I haven't seen any sign of the protected area, the restricted section. And she's like, they have to have one. They're just hiding it. But then she sees the skylight, and so she gets out her human skin gloves and goes to open it. And of course, as soon as she touches it with the gross, weird gloves, it opens and a ladder comes down and she's found what she was looking for. Thank goodness that wasn't difficult at all. She keeps thinking about, in this chapter, how free she's going to be once she gets the bond breaker and they break her curse. And yeah, she won't have to live in her glass tower anymore, but I don't think she's really grasping what it means to be a ruler. She's not just going to be like able to faff around and do whatever she wants and read all the books that she wants and everything. She's going to be expected to lead her people, to rule her people, and this is going to be a people who now have a drastically different life than they had been previously having under the curse, but are still hugely disadvantaged because all of their men are dead, I guess? And like, even if they are now allowed to fall in love without having to kill each other, that's still an issue, I think. I still don't understand why the gross gloves work like this, but like, at this point I really need to stop asking why anything. I'm not going to stop, but I should. And she gets up there and we get one tiny little description of what she sees, and she doesn't see the bond breaker. And again, because the description of what's up there is so short, it literally feels like she poked her head up, looked around, didn't immediately see what she was looking for, and was like, well, it's not here. And she's so disappointed that she's not even like trying to be stealthy, and Cleo finds her. Cleo, the mean girl, quote unquote. I hate that archetype. I hate characters who are just like mean for no reason, or who exist just to be like a foil for the main character, and I have not really gotten much proof that Cleo is anything but just somebody, another woman to be mean to our main character, to have a woman be mean to our main character. So she realizes that Cleo has spotted her, and so she makes a break for it and crashes headfirst right into Grimm. Because, of course. Also, all of this is because our main character was being dumb and didn't sneak in, even though she was so nervous about being caught with blue hair. But then after she didn't find what she was looking for, she's marching in the front door. He, like, shields her, so they're, like, both invisible, I'm assuming? Yeah, he took her like to the far end of the room and made them both invisible. And of course, while they were invisible, she was all like, oh, this being close to him. I'm just nervous because I don't want to get caught, that's all. he notices her hair is blue and he's like, are you trying to change sides? And he says, you might consider Nightshade. We can't compete with Skyling when it comes to sweets or inventive drinks, but if debauchery is what you're after... His dark eyes gleamed in amusement. We are most famed for our thorough exploration of pleasure. And then our main character has the audacity to think, what was he implying? I had to reread the sentence because my brain just refused to process it, but she had always judged the wildlings reckless enough to begin to have feelings for someone. So I think what this means is that she used to be judgy of anybody who got into a romantic relationship back home, which is fair because those people would end up dead. Like I would be judgy too if every time you caught feels, then you had to die. But I thought for a minute she was going to be like, hey, the wildlings are stereotyped in this way. Maybe I need to stop stereotyping Grimm as like evil and cold just because I've been told that that's how his people are. That would have been really cool, a moment of clarity. But instead it's just her being like, am I catching feels? No, I can't be. I always judge people who catch feels. And so she's like, thanks, bye. And she's not worried about him having seen her with blue hair, so... Okay, and that's the end of the chapter, and as I predicted, the actual search for the actual MacGuffin was probably the shortest part of this entire chapter. This author's priorities are weird, and I wonder if she maybe should have written something besides a really out-there fantasy world, because she has no interest in expanding upon the lore, the magic, the rules, the foundation of her world building. None of that interests her. All she wants to do is have these cutesy, like, romantic and friendship moments, and I feel like maybe a different book would have lent itself better to that. Yeah, next chapter's pretty short, and Nigel's already here, so we might as well keep reading. Alright, let's see if I can get through this chapter in the 40 minutes that are left on my memory card. Isla gets invited to her own demonstration? What? It said the rulers put out their own invitations, but it said Isla's invitation arrived the next morning. Her demonstration was next. All she can think about is Grimm, of course, because that's the most important part of this story. So we learn again that off-page she memorized all of the rulers' various movements, like their characters in Stardew, and you need to memorize what time of day you can go give your love interest of choice a turnip. Fortunately, she's done this, so she's like, I'm gonna go find Grimm, and I have his movements memorized. But instead, she finds Azul. Also, I'm assuming her hair is back to normal now because magic. I don't know why, but like she loves to italicize Grimm's name, even at times when it's very odd to do so. I just want to point out that we keep hearing about how much Azul loves jewelry. I really want Grimm to love jewelry. Now that would be an interesting character trait. She's convinced that he totally knows that she was disguised as one of his people last night. I feel like I can't even give this guy minority only there to help the white straight main character because like he's barely even in this story at all. So here's another interesting element that I don't think the author is going to utilize. So for some reason Azul is just giving her a rundown of how all of the previous Lightlark's Hunger Games went. Being her Hamish, they're here for a minute, and talking about how, like, by the third one, they started to do the teams thing, the alliance thing, and I'm like, that could be a really interesting thing to explore. Who did everybody team up with last time? What alliances did they forge and then break by the end of the Lightlark competition, the Centennial? There could be a lot of really meaty interpersonal stuff involved in all of the history that these people have with each other that Isla does not have, but I very much doubt that this author is going to do a damn thing with it. It's interesting that the author thinks that the Centennial needs to have a prize as well as freeing everyone from their curses. Like, to me, freeing your land from your curse is a suitable enough prize. We have to keep mentioning that there's like a cool prize if you win. And also, you know, you get to free your people from horrible curses. But what about the power that you could get at the end? Whoa. We also find out that a previous, I'm assuming, High King, Egan, had married Aurora, who was outside of his realm. So this king chose to marry outside his realm. Probably, I feel like that's probably what caused the curse or something like that. Just guessing on I have no idea. I don't remember if that's anything that was ever spoiled for me. I'm just guessing on like fantasy trope feels here, feeling it out, getting the vibe. Here's something else interesting that this author won't look into. So Isla finds out that the Skyling Isle is a democracy and they could vote Azul out as their leader. But they live in a world that has like divine selection for leaders. They are chosen by blood. Like he would still be the ruler by magical choice, by divine choice of his people, but he wouldn't be ruling them, which could be a really weird thing to have to deal with when he's expected to like go to the Centennial and win and save them when they voted him out as their king. Which sounds like a way more interesting person to follow than Isla. We're not interested in that sort of thing around this book. We want teenage girl romance times. Also, Azul is gay, so if he wants to have an heir, does he have to have sex with a woman, or is adoption enough? I don't understand how any of this works. I'm also curious why Isla just, like, believes that everyone is patently against her. Like, I get it, kind of. She was trained to be suspicious of everyone, but she's like, Azul has done nothing to her. He's been nothing but friendly and kind, and he's just told her a whole bunch of information without being asked. And she's still like, is he counting down the days until he gets to kill me? Did his people vote for me to be the first to die? And it's like, not everything is about you, woman. Yeah, he just brought her here to show her this weird mountain musical instrument that is played by airbending into these holes that are carved in the side of a mountain. And I'm just like, okay, sure. If we needed the thinnest reason for him to want to explain plot and world building things to her, this is as good of reason as any. And of course they totally make friends as he's playing the instrument and she like hums along and he's happy now. He wasn't happy before, but now he's like visibly happy. That's all he fucking wanted. That's it. He was just like, hey, can I exposit at you for a minute? And she was like, okay, sure. And then he did, and then they played a mountain musical instrument together, and it's done. That's the whole sequence. Kind of is giving off Child at the Fountain vibes, you remember from A Night in Its Moon, where Nox needed the plot to happen, so a kid came along and gave her a quest hook. The author decided that we needed some exposition, so Azul came along and just, here you go. She's like, good, great. Now that I'm done with that exposition dump, I am going to find Grimm, and I still know where he is. And actually, did we have info dump? I'm gonna give it info dump just because it was so unnatural, the way that it was set up, and so random. Slightly different kind of info dump, but if you make it too obvious that you only have a scene there and only have characters talking for the express purpose of giving us an info dump, then I am gonna mark it for that. Also, she has to go to Grimm's bedroom because he's no longer out in the city. So she went to go see Grimm, and the only thing she wanted to tell him was what her demonstration was going to be so he could prepare in advance. She just comes in, she's like, this is what my demonstration's gonna be, you know, so you can prep in advance. And he's like, cool, and she's like, bye. All that, and they didn't even have a full conversation. It's just like, I feel like Alex Astor is allergic to characters having full and realistic sounding conversations. She's like, okay, we got the info that we need out of the way, dust off my hands, we're done, the characters move on. This book, like, there's so many short chapters, but they all feel so small and choppy, and the author doesn't care about any of it. It feels so passionless. Like, say what you will about A Night in Its Moon, you could tell that the author was really into it while she was writing it, at least. I have does Alex Astor even like to write? Because this book feels so, like, disinterested in any of its characters, in any of its world building. I mean, in all of her TikToks, Alex is like, this is my heart book, this is the book I've always wanted to write, but it feels so passionless.
It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
Oh, hi, patrons. Patrons like Jessica, Caitlin, Ursula, KJ, LaFone, Amanda, Unicorn Jenny, Celia, Neon, Taya, Alyssa, Rita, Deborah, Afra, Melissa, Swamp Goblin Waifu, Sophia, Merween, Kit, Hidden Glade, Light Julie, Belle, Patrick, Anne Sophie, Callison, Ray, Shelby, Zaire, Jesper, Rennie, Scribbling Cat, Savvy, Jenny, Amanda, Lisa, and Sarah.
If this place once had a name, it has long been lost. I call it the Crossroads, a place where all Illuvians join, wherever they might be.